You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com. Do you want to experience the thrill of a Packers game at Lambeau Field? If so, be sure to get your game ticket from the longtime trusted source in Wisconsin, Ticket King. Visit their locations in Milwaukee and Green Bay, or just go to their website at ticketking.com. Again, that's ticketking.com.
You're listening to the best Packer radio show on the internet.
Cheesehead Radio.
Reach the office.
Get those back.
So I think that's the logical explanation.
Let's just, say that didn't happen.
It was a return to greatness. It was a return to form.
It's crazy. And he just kind of flew under the radar.
Get this out there so I sound good on Cheesehead Radio.
Yeah.
No negativity allowed, sir.
So I think that's actually going to be really exciting to watch. I don't think there's anything positive we can say. There's a lot.
Oh, you were looking for positive.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I meant. Positive, I think.
All right, Green Bay Packer fans, welcome back to Cheesehead Radio. Last week I predicted a loss, and boy, could I have not been more wrong and more happy about it. Green Bay Packers not just winning a game, making a statement to the rest of the NFL that, hey, we'd really prefer not to play you, and please don't make the playoffs. Green Bay Packers doing great. We are here to talk all about it. My name's C.D. Angeli over at PackersTalk.com. I am in the middle of a knowledge bomb sandwich. To my left, Michelle Bruton of Cheesehead TV and Bleacher Report, and Jayme Snowden on the other side. How you doing, ladies?
Hello. Doing pretty well. How are you?
Awesome sauce. Joining us later in the show is going to be Grandpa himself, Jersey Al Bracco. Going to be coming to us a little bit late tonight, but we'll welcome him. We're also welcoming Rob Reischel, author, Packer Plus writer, sports editor, News Pub Corps over at GS Online. Will be joining us again. He was with us once before, not too long ago. Glad to have him back. Sponsoring the Packers Talk Network this year, the fine folks at Ticket King. They've been selling Packers badges and other tickets in Wisconsin for just short of 25 years and have earned a reputation for excellent customer service and prices. Check them out on their site, theticketking.com. 10% off deal still going on when you go to order your tickets. Packers Talk to get a 10% discount on what could be the last home game of the season, Packers versus Vikings. I'm hoping to be there myself. Very excited about that. But right now, it's time for some Packers news.
Packers news.
There it is. Well, it feels like deja vu, but we opened the news this week in the midst of hashtag Calf Watch Part 2. Aaron Rodgers sat out practice on Wednesday as he nursed his sprained right calf, which he thinks he injured compensating for his injured left hamstring. This isn't the same calf that Rodgers had injured last year at this time.
Well, for some good news on the injury front, tight end Jared Cook was a full participant in Wednesday's practice after suffering a chest injury on Sunday. Mike McCarthy said that he thinks the Packers should have Cook this week against the Bears.
And here's some news that everyone pretty much already knew, even if it wasn't officially official. The Packers consider Ty Montgomery to be a true running back now. And McCarthy said Monday that Montgomery, quote, hasn't gone to a receivers meeting in weeks. If you're wondering why Montgomery is still wearing number 88, however, it's because he can't change his number mid-season.
Because that would be unofficially official. Never mind, anyway. If you're wondering what that move means for Eddie Lacy's future in Green Bay, he is too. On Tuesday, Lacy talked to ESPN's Rob Demovsky during a promotional appearance and said that he hopes he's back with the team in 2017, but he has no idea how any of that works.
Well, he hires an agent. In other news, don't call them fair weather fans. As the Packers' play has improved, the demand for tickets has risen accordingly, according to SeatGeek, which reports that 11% of new buyers on their site this week who are purchasing tickets for Sunday's game at Soldier Field are from Wisconsin.
And speaking of weather, it's gotten frigid in Wisconsin, I can attest, which means that it's perfect ice skating and sledding weather. Actually, no, it's not. The Packers have begun work. It's really, really cold. It is. The Packers have begun work on the park features of the new construction in Titletown District, which means that fans could be sledding and skating in the shadow of Lambeau Field by Thanksgiving 2017.
All right. After defeating the Seahawks, the Packers have risen rapidly in the power rankings and Super Bowl odds. The Packers are now 18-1 to win it all, which is the 7th highest team on the list.
And where are they in the power rankings, Michelle?
I didn't include that, but I know they moved up.
They did. Excellent. Rapidly, I hear. Finally,
yes.
In the category of pretty awesome news, the Packers' Micah Hyde, Brett Hundley, and Blake Martinez boarded a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter on Tuesday and flew to Fort McCoy to visit cadets at a Wisconsin Challenge Academy, a program for at-risk youth sponsored by the National Guard. Just a normal Tuesday for these players.
And that was your Packers News of the Week. Now it's time for your...
Packer Tweets from Packer Tweets.
The Packer Rancher starts us out this week with his usual tongue-in-cheek humor, mocking our quickly fading friends to the west of the Mississippi River. But Minnesota's Mike Zimmer was quoted as saying, "I'm tired of not living up to our ability. I'm not going to stand for it." The Rancher diagnosis was, he's moving from the denial stage to the anger stage. Only bargaining, depression, and acceptance to go.
Well, there's a couple of Aaron Rodgers parody accounts out there on Twitter, and they've been noticeably quiet the past few months as the target of their affections has struggled. But with Rodgers' resurgence, so too have the parody accounts revitalized, and fake Rodgers deftly piled on announcer Troy Aikman's desperate pleas for Rodgers to be so hurt fans needed to be concerned, tweeting, "You never know it the way Troy's talking. He's making it sound like I'm on my deathbed."
This sudden turnaround of Aaron Rodgers being washed up back to his old self wasn't lost on Cheesehead TV and Press Gazette owner Aaron Nagler, who takes a Ferris Bueller approach to how Packer Nation's emotions can turn off and on like a light switch. October, what's wrong with Aaron Rodgers? December, Aaron Rodgers is an MVP candidate. Life comes at you fast.
Amazing. Finally, one of our favorite players, TJ Lang, not only returned to the lineup, but returned in grand fashion to Twitter, and then to our list of tweets. When criticized by some random troll that he should, quote, stop taking everything so personally and show a little class following a kerfuffle on the field, Lang replied later by stating the issue plainly and simply. Sorry, man, I'll try to keep my composure next time I get punched in the nuts.
That's the way to shut down a troll, and that was definitely your Cheesehead Radio Tweet of the Week.
Tweet of the Week. The Playbook.
I just figured I'd get that sting out of the way so I didn't have to try to find it later.
Touché.
I'm rather impressed with your use of the word kerfuffle.
Yeah, it's a good word.
What is a kerfuffle anyway?
What's a kerfuffle?
Yeah.
What do you mean what's a kerfuffle? It's a,
well, define it.
It's a scrap or a altercation.
A commotion or a fuss, especially one caused by conflicting views.
Oh, go ahead, Stat Girl.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
So,
Jamie's got her pocket Webster's dictionary over here.
I like that apparently this is the new theme. We should add, maybe you can create a new thing for this CD. The last 2 weeks you've had a question about Michelle's use of words and asked her to define them. This week it was kerfluffle. Last week it was climb. What will it be next week?
We should keep a list.
There you are.
With Michelle.
It's expanding my vocabulary.
I was a third grade spelling bee champion, so, doing my part.
Well, that will make Al happy because spelling is very important to him. He gets very upset when I misspell in the script. And speaking of Al, I think he might be here.
What? Who? Me? Am
I
lurking? No, I'm not lurking. No. Not at all. And yes, I am very anal about spelling. So,
that's okay.
An OCD thing.
I feel I did a good job of making that entire conversation go full circle. So
yeah, that was very neat.
It was a good segue.
All tied together. Yep, tied together nicely. So what are we talking about, folks?
Kerfuffles.
We just finished the news and tweets, and we're just about to start the playbook, but CD took a slight digression into defining kerfuffle.
Okay.
So a normal
You're very surprised, aren't you? Yes, there you go. Well, the gang of four is back together, I think, for the first time in a while. So good to have all four of us here. And a good time for us all to get together because Green Bay Packers are looking pretty darn good suddenly. What's your take, guys? What do you guys think? Is this for real?
It's for real until it isn't anymore.
The end.
So existential.
I know. What does it mean to win?
He who wins shall lose, and he who loses shall win. Never let out. So anyway, well, let's start out a little bit. I think one of the biggest stories, and I guess the thing that took me most, that I had to take most out of this game, were a few of the passes thrown by Aaron Rodgers. Now, it was interesting because Russell Wilson went back for a couple passes, and I don't know what you guys saw, but I kept seeing a lot of rainbows going over the heads of players, and for some reason that just kind of reminded me of what we had been seeing from Aaron Rodgers maybe the past season and a half. And all of a sudden he would go back, and Rodgers would go back and throw this dart, and I'm just like, oh gosh, it's not going to go. He's going to miss it. And it was right on the money. It was vintage Aaron Rodgers. I mean, putting it in places where there's defenders batting at it, and it's just coming within a centimeter of their finger and going right at accuracy of Aaron Rodgers appears to be back. And I find absolutely no lack of correlation between his accuracy and the score that we saw on Sunday. What do you think?
This really just feels to me like last season around this time when he went out in the first half of that game against the Lions, and then he came back. And pretty much from that point on, like, we knew he was playing hurt. We knew he was really hurt. But I almost feel like we're talking about correlations. I almost feel like there's a direct correlation between Aaron Rodgers' physical state and his mental state, in the sense that the more beat up he gets physically, the more kind of like driven and steely he gets mentally. And I almost feel like he's at his most dangerous when he's nursing some sort of injury, or just whenever he's faced with some sort of adversity that kind of allows him to like step up and really become a leader for this team.
I was kind of going to say something similar, Michelle, because I feel like the thing that I worried about earlier in the season about Aaron Rodgers was his footwork and just his lack of just kind of staying strict with his fundamentals. And for some reason, the fact that both of his legs are gimpy, I feel like, and now his footwork is better. Like, I feel like that doesn't make sense, that like, the feet are the problem.
You're on the right track.
But
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, I think that once he realizes that he can't just assume it's going to be fine, that he has to be a little bit more aware of his body, and he gets that fire underneath him to just keep fighting through things. I think it helps them go back to just what naturally happens, as opposed to the overthinking and maybe just avoiding his proper mechanics, if any of that makes sense.
Well, I think it does make sense, and I want to add to that, because what I was going to say is I think the fact that when he knows he's gimpy and you can't really run, I think he knows he's got to stay in there and find somebody. He's not going to have that option and just wait and know, well, at some point if I don't find anybody, I'll just take off. No, he makes faster decisions because he knows, if the rushers get to him, he's not running away like he normally can. So I think that's part of it as well. Ooh, silence.
Yeah, I kind of felt like I was being a little punched. No, I just I agree, because I feel like it gets him more fire to create the plays actually downfield, but it limits him in the fact that he can't just be whatever with things. Like, he actually has to go through all of the progression, and he actually has to go through staying in the pocket and some of that, the mechanic stuff that he was just letting go before, so that he could run and kind of fly around. And it is, I feel very strange thing. It's like he's taking on too much, but when he gets the fire lit on, he takes on a lot, just in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But I missed the first half of the game, and so I feel like I missed most of the fun of seeing Aaron Rodgers be Aaron Rodgers again.
At one point. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and then, I really got the third quarter, and then he was out, and then the game was gone for a little while. I didn't get to see as much fun as everyone else. When I asked, like, should I risk it? Should I risk the jinx by tuning in? And someone was like, oh, my God, no, do it, because it's so much fun to watch.
Right, at one point right before halftime, he had 158.3 passer rating. It was incredible.
Oh.
It was a pretty decent half. Yeah.
pretty satisfactory.
Yes. Acceptable. What wasn't acceptable was Fox cutting away. I guess they went to the end of another game, right? They went to the end of the Redskins Cardinals game. Oh, the Tampa Bay.
I got the Tampa Bay game, and Right. The Redskins Cardinals finished, and then they went to the Tampa Bay Miami game. So missed probably about 7 or 8 minutes of the first quarter because of that.
Including the 66-yard touchdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, people on Twitter, oh my God, what play? I didn't see it. What play? Why are you doing this to me? I had changed my TV to the DirecTV channel for when they would turn it on, and my husband Brian was just sitting here going, it's blacked out. I'm like, no, eventually they switch it back. They have to. That's the rule. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, and Seattle just scored, and I threw my phone on the couch. So like, does Fox not understand how these two teams play each other, and that Aaron Rodgers was out of the game? Like, the game was not over. No, that was definitely premature, especially with the history, like you said, of what's happened before. It was definitely premature. But for some reason, they seem to want to keep cutting away from the Packers game. It didn't interest them, I guess.
Yeah, I don't. And maybe they thought once Hundley came in, it would just turn into this Packers run 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 plays, punt, eat up clock, and it just there won't even be the highlight fun things to see, but I don't care about their highlights. I want to see my team. But speaking of like premature and pulling and like the change in the game, what did you guys think about the switch from Rodgers to Hundley? Did you think it was the right time to do it? Did you think it was because of the score, or did you think it was because of how hurt Rodgers was?
I think that the tweet we read from the fake Rodgers Twitter account was pretty accurate Troy Aikman was just acting like Rodgers was, literally his leg was hanging off by a thread from his body. I mean, he was like, oh, you absolutely, you have to take him out now and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. I understand why they took Rodgers out of the game when they did. And especially thinking about, if they're going to make it all the way, they have to, play, 8 more games all the way. But I don't know. I mean, it suggested to me that he's more hurt than he seems to be, because we've heard all these reports about how this calf injury isn't nearly as bad as the one he had last year. And I don't know. It makes me wonder how much he's actually playing through, because it seemed like there were almost 12 minutes left in the quarter when he came out.
I think it was nice to see the beginning of the Hundley era. I think it was good to see Rodgers come out. I think there were people calling for it earlier, even from when he went out. I think the game was well in hand, and I think at some point you really have to look at Hundley and say, okay, what if Rodgers is out of our control? Because he's looking gimpy. I'm not saying he's injured. I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm not saying that it's the end of the world. I'm not going all John Rahor. But there's a shot. I mean, it happened at the end of the Super Bowl season. He was out for a game, and Matt Flynn went in. You got to be ready to go, and I think you got to be able to see what this guy can do against a decent defense. Not that the Seahawks defense was pretty decent that day, but no, I was totally in support of it. I think it was good to take him out and see him smiling on the sidelines, and hopefully getting a little treatment on his calf.
No special tent this week, though.
The magic tent.
Exactly. So, Al, why don't you start us off with our next topic, Morgan Burnett. Is that Morgan or is that Michelle who typed that in? Yeah.
It wasn't me, but...
Michelle, go ahead.
Well, I live blog the games for Bleacher Report, and I have to, find a lot of social media support whenever something big happens. And I feel like for the last 2 to 3 weeks now, every other tweet or Instagram or GIF or whatever or Snapchat that I take is about Morgan Burnett. He is just blowing up. He's had huge plays in both the game against the Texans and the game against the Seahawks. And before he had that interception, I felt like you could just see it playing out in slow motion. You just knew he was about to get it. And I know this defense really operates under the belief that, interceptions and sacks come in bunches, and I think they really feed off the momentum of people starting to get that going. And, the offense has been playing great for weeks now, and it's kind of gone under the radar because the defense has really just been so crappy. But the defense, I think, was what was the key to this win against the Seahawks, and I think that you can kind of trace the resurgence of this defense, obviously, to people getting healthy. I think Randall and Rollins being back in the game counts for everything, but really I think you go back and you look at the tape and you look at what Morgan Burnett's been doing, and he's just been creating this snowball effect, I think, of spectacular effort and just, putting himself in position to make a play on the ball.
And I have to say that I think his safety partner there has stepped it up also the last couple of weeks. I was actually starting to get, and CD's favorite player as well, I was actually trying to get a little down on him because I really thought he looked a little out of sorts earlier in the season, like he maybe was in the wrong place a lot and was blowing coverages and all of that. But the last few games, he's been on point. He's been closer to receivers. He's close enough to give a big hit on a receiver when they catch the ball, and that hadn't been happening for a while. There was always way too much distance between him and the receiver catching the ball. So in any case, I think both of those guys, and, no doubt having the better healthy cornerbacks back in the game certainly helps the safety play as well, as we discussed a little on Cheesehead TV there in one of the post conversations. But so, yeah, definite props to both of those guys.
And I was actually just going to say that, Al, that the play of the corners really, I think, has made the difference. You've had a lot of very young guys coming in there, Gunter and everyone else, who have really been, and there were a couple plays, got to admit, Russell Wilson, had he been a little more accurate, Gunter and some of those guys, Goodson might have been a little bit burned on those. But they're playing well, they're playing better, and it's allowing those safeties to do what they need to do back there, to be dangerous, to help out in coverage, to wind up and make a Chuck Cecil-like hit if they have to. And Clinton Dix has been doing it, but yeah, Morgan Burnett makes a big interception, and that's huge. Really kind of puts the nail in the coffin and puts the Seahawks away early. And how often have we been asking all season long? We need this defense to start forcing some turnovers. And just in the past, 4 or 5 weeks, 3-4 weeks, they've been doing it. So they've been doing their part. Dom Capers, you go, boy. Nicely done. And does he not always seem to do this? Does he? Right when you bring Ray Hoare on the show and he starts the fire Dom Caper things, as soon as he does that, Dom Capers turns it around again and starts playing well. And you're like, oh, gosh, how could we ever be thinking about firing Dom Capers? But he does it.
And look at the pure genius of coming up with that scheme where he had a guy run in from the sideline and get a running start. I mean, what?
That's hysterical.
So innovative, pure genius from him. It had to be one of the funnest things we'll see all year.
Yeah, and I'm surprised because I mentioned last week that at some point every game, one of the announcers talks about Dom Capers' genius, creative play calling. And I was surprised that it didn't happen then, because it has happened every game this season, and it always just makes me chuckle. But that I would have bought it on that one. But I wanted to add, when we were speaking of safeties and just turnovers and improved play, I also mentioned last week that one of the people, especially on the live blog, that gets a lot of ire is Micah Hyde. At least once, maybe 20 times a game, somebody questions why he's on the team and not fired mid-game. And there was a moment during his interception return that I was so proud of him, because you knew, you watching him run, you're like, he's going to lateral that ball. He's going to, oh my gosh, he's going to lateral it.
He thought
and when he didn't,
that was the first thing he thought, yep.
Yes, because you saw
as soon as he caught it, he looked back
running.
looking for somebody.
Yes, Yes, and then he did it again. It was immediately, and then he ran a little more, and right before he went down, there was someone just behind him, and you saw him look at him, and I was like, don't do it. Oh, thank God. And
I missed that. He did it a second time?
Yes, he looked back
I missed that.
twice.
Oh, I'm going to have to go look at that. Yeah.
I was so proud of him. That was because I feel that's the Micah Hyde that we know is I'm going to lateral this interception to try to be Leroy Butler and Reggie White and just in an unnecessary way. And then Seattle's going to get it and just screw it all up. And so I was so happy he didn't do it.
Hey, that brings up a point, and it's funny. I haven't mentioned this to anybody because I figure I'm probably just crazy, but I might as well bring it out. Whenever, tell me if I'm nuts, but whenever one of the Packers defensive backs intercepts a pass, aren't you always cringing at the run back? Like, do you ever have that feeling like, that he's going to take it and just go to no, they're always all over the place, and at some point they're surrounded and they're still trying to fight, and you're like, just go down, you idiot.
They all want to be heroes.
No, I feel like we don't really have good interception return defensive backs. How's that for a wacky term? But anyway, I'm always yelling
they don't get a lot of practice at it. So.
Yes, well, very good point. Very good. Yeah. All right.
So what do you guys think about defensive end Dean Lowry coming on?
No, he's my hot pocket.
Oh, don't take her hot
never
pocket.
mind. Sorry.
The wrong part of the script.
We'll just edit that out later.
We will do that because no one else put anything in for the game plan here, so we're just making stuff up.
One thing I was going to say when we were talking about Micah Hyde is I saw in his comments after the game, he was saying that the Packers felt like they could get the ball off of Russell Wilson, and he referenced, and I had totally forgotten this, they had 5 interceptions of Wilson on Sunday. In the NFC Championship game, didn't they pick him off 4 times? So for whatever reason, the Packers defensive backs just have Russell Wilson's number. I had totally forgotten that it had also, because I was laughing uproariously at the 4th and 5th interceptions. I just thought it was so comical. Like it was like a slapstick, like vaudeville comedy of the more absurd something gets, the funnier it becomes. And I completely forgot that it was the same kind of deal with a very different ending in the championship game. And I can't believe that they've picked him off 10 times in their last 3 meetings.
Yeah.
Which is
it's incredible.
Insane to me. For a defense that, like we were saying, isn't necessarily, a vulture type defense against quarterbacks.
And I believe, didn't he only have 4 interceptions the whole season so far, or something like that?
Yeah, something crazy.
So more in one game than over 10 games.
And the thing I think is so interesting, too, is that, there's obviously such a relationship between the front 7 and the secondary, and generally the better your front 7 and the more pressure they can bring, the more opportunities your secondary will get to make those plays on the ball. But I feel like Green Bay's defensive line hasn't even been playing that lights out as of late. And so this one just really goes to the defensive backs, I feel like. They really deserve this, this win.
Yeah, you mentioned something in there about the multiple interceptions, but with a different result. Well, we all know what the result was the last time when they intercepted him 4 times. So at some point during the game, I think when the Packers had 2 interceptions and the game was still close, somebody tweeted, "I hope the Packers don't intercept them 4 times." Saying we don't want bad history to repeat itself. Yeah. Well, I guess they did one better and did 5, and that was the difference. So
that person was probably very happy with the 5th.
Yeah, exactly.
Reverse the curse.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, we got about 15 minutes. Here we are about halfway through the show. We're going to be welcoming Rob Reischel here at about the 45-minute mark of the show. Since we have a little bit of time, should we jump into our Hot Pockets?
Sure.
Let's do that. All right. Jayme Snowden, you get to start us off today.
Ooh, I don't think I've ever let off on the Hot Pocket.
You are the leading Hot Pocket.
I'm the hottest.
Hot Pocket.
Thank you.
Yum. So on last week's show, we were talking about the rivalry between Seattle and Green Bay. We likened it a little bit to the rivalry between the Packers had with the Cowboys. And my favorite part of that Cowboys rivalry was the win in '97 at Lambeau, 45-17. I think that's one of the scores, one of the games I'll remember my entire life because it felt so good to finally happen. And I actually got an A in my history class because I likened it to the Battle of New Orleans, of just kind of a beatdown that you needed to do, even though you were clearly going to win and you were already ahead of that team. Anyways, so I just found it interesting that the Packers then went out after that show, beat Seattle at home with not the same score, but the same differential in points. And again, just a beat down of an opponent, not just beating them, but really just demolishing them, demoralizing them, and saying, nope, this was never your game, this was ours. So I just thought it was a nice, funny, quirky similarity from something that we touched on last week as well.
Hot Pocket.
All right. Michelle, your Hot Pocket is next.
All right. Well, after much build-up, my Hot Pocket this week is defensive lineman Dean Lowry, who was the 4th-round draft pick out of Northwestern in my home city, Chicago. And, we've seen 4th-round pick Blake Martinez go right into a starter role and kind of do a lot of things for this defense this year. But Dean Lowry hadn't really gotten as many opportunities. He was barely part of the rotation. And then all of a sudden, after Mike Pennell got suspended, Dean Lowry got his highest snap count of the season in Week 13 to date, which I think had been 18 snaps, and he got his first career sack. And it seems like now anytime he gets, there's a direct correlation between the number of snaps he gets and the plays he makes on the field. He played in 34 snaps, which is a new season high, against Seattle, and he had a sack as well for the second straight week of Russell Wilson. And so I think that this is what you want to see. I mean, if you're Dumb Capers, if you're going to be giving a guy opportunities, you want to see him taking advantage of them and doing things that show up on the stat sheet. And I think that they might have something pretty special in Dean Lowry, and I think it comes at a great time because given that he's now serving his second suspension for the same type of offense this season and will have missed half the season by the end of it all, I'm really not sure Pennell comes back next year. And so I think Dean Lowry is someone now who could be, kind of a force to be reckoned with in training camp and earn a position on the active roster and as part of the rotation right off the bat next year. So I think he's just only doing good things and, hopefully they keep giving him the opportunities. Maybe he'll get another sack this week, which would be great.
Hot Pocket.
It's kind of nice when the team's doing well. You see a lot of these individual guys picking it up too. So good for Lowry. I think he's having a great season. Jersey Al, you're up.
Jersey Al, yes. My Hot Pocket is how wonderful it was to see the Legion of Boom go poof. Not just beat Seattle, but really embarrass their defense, embarrass their defensive backs especially, who were taking cheap shots at the Packers all game long, right? We saw Randall Cobb get cheap shotted at the kneel down at the half. We saw Devontae Adams get cheap shotted away from the ball by Richard Sherman. We saw it all. We saw, well, not in the defensive backfield, but according to T.J. Lang, he took a sucker punch in the private parts from Cliff Averill. So that kind of stuff was going on, and that's the kind of team they are, and I'm so glad that they put up that many points on them and just thoroughly embarrassed them. So that's my Hot Pocket.
Hot Pocket.
My name is C.D. Angeli, and I'm going to give you my Hot Pocket. There was a good meme out there in which I saw a picture of Jay Cutler who said, no one throws more interceptions than me against the Packers. And then there's a picture of Russell Wilson saying, challenge accepted. So that was kind of interesting with the Bears coming up next week. I'm kind of a softie for the Bears rivalry. as a kid, I was brought up, my dad was a Lions fan. He's from Upper Michigan, who kind of converted over time to the Packers. He actually brought me to a Packer game. I never really got into football when I was very young. Sometimes kids just don't get into the sports. And finally, I just happened to be at my grandmother's house in Upper Michigan with my family and was walking by, and everyone was watching the Packer game, and I was still at that age where I really wasn't into it. And I actually happened to sit and watch the last 5 minutes of this Packers-Bears game. Everyone was really into it, so I kind of got into it too. And this just happened to be the game in which Chester Markle lined up for a field goal, had it blocked. He ran the ball in the most clumsy, ridiculous way in which you expected him just to fall down of his own accord, in for a touchdown for the game-winning score. It was the end of the game. From that moment, I became a Packer fan. That was my first Packer moment, was that game. It's kind of a famous moment in Packer lore, but so with the Packers coming up to play the Bears, and obviously it's not going to be a very, you certainly hope it's not going to be a very close matchup, but that's just something that I always get a little sentimental with when we play the Bears, is that this really was my first moment becoming a Packer fan. So that was 1980, which makes me a very old millennial, but always kind of a nice little anniversary to see him play in the Bears again. And that is my
Hot Pocket.
I think we should all end our Hot Pocket by saying, and that is my, and then you play the sting.
Oh,
think that
I
should
love
be,
that.
Right? I think that should be a requirement.
I also like Jayme going yum at the end, too, confusing it a little bit with Red Robin.
That's good, too. Yep,
I'm
that's
sorry.
Good.
It was good. We can add
that. It goes through my head.
Hot Pockets, yum. I'm going to add that.
That's good. Good, I like it.
Now we're never going to get Nestle sponsorship.
We were so close.
We had it. Almost there.
Negotiations are going to break down.
Absolutely. Well, before we get to Rob, let's get to our Packer game predictions.
Cheesehead Radio. Packers game predictions.
Well, this Sunday at 12 o'clock, the Green Bay Packers head down to Soldier Field to take on the Chicago Bears. The Bears not having a great season. We're hoping that's going to be a nice, easy win for the Packers as they attempt Game 4 of 6 of running the table. Let's take it around the horn and see how we see the game turning out. Jersey Al, we will start with you.
All right. Well, I've got the Packers winning the game 24-6. The Bears put up a bit of a fight last week against the Lions. The Lions really were not playing well, which we hope will continue this week when they play the Giants. But the Bears just didn't have enough to actually beat them. They're certainly not going to have enough to beat the Packers. So I've got the Packers 24, Bears 6.
All right. Jayme Snowden, what say you?
Oh, I thought I was muted, and then I was freaking out, and I realized I wasn't muted at all. Sorry. So my predictions are going to be
the reverse mute
relatively boring from here on out, because if it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it. I am just going to stick with Packers 28, opponent whoever we're playing 21. I have predicted that the last 3 weeks, and things have gone okay. So Packers 28, Bears, Lions, Vikings 21.
You know those NFL commercials where they always show fans doing these weird rituals that no one ever actually does, but they make it look like it's a ritual? This could be your ritual, Jayme, is just 28-21. That's your ritual.
Yep, that's it.
Whatever works.
It's working. I'm going with it.
Exactly. All right. C.D. Angeli, I picked against the Packers last week. I probably should be like Jayme and just pick against them every week. However, there's really been no rhyme or reason to what I've been doing. And I'm just going to say Packers 95, Bears 3.
Like it.
Yes. Michelle, goes to you next.
All right. Well, I think I esteem the Bears a little bit higher than you do, CD.
What?
They really have nothing left to play for this season except to serve as the spoiler to other teams. But they came pretty close to doing that to Detroit last week. we saw some pretty good things from them, and I think John Fox is one of the best coaches in the league. But I'm not sure, the Bears have Alshon Jeffrey returning this week, and I think a lot of people are going to think that's going to give them a boost. But I believe he has only one touchdown reception on the season and hasn't really been what they need this year. So I think if the same Packers secondary that showed up against Russell Wilson and intercepted him 5 times can get after Matt Barkley, they're going to have a hard time putting points on the board. So I'm going with Packers 21, Bears 10.
21 to 10. All right. Well, everybody picking the Packers this time, as well they should. What about some of the other games that affect the Packers out there, right? We've got the Giants playing the Lions, playing host to the Lions, I believe, right? Isn't that a home game for the Giants?
I believe it is. Let's see.
Yeah, yes, it is. I just checked it. All right, so Giants coming off of a nice win. Lions almost having lost. I'm feeling good about the Giants' chances there of helping us out, and really we need help, right? We need Detroit to lose to somebody. They've got to play the Giants, they've got to play the Cowboys, and then they've got to play the Packers. So if they can lose one of those 2 games and we can do what Rodgers said and win out, we are golden.
I think it would be really poetic if the Giants could beat Detroit and kind of put the Packers in the position they need to be in, because for a couple of years there, back in 2011, 2012, I think, was when the Giants started to become spoilers for the Packers and kind of kept them from the playoffs a couple years in a row. And I feel like there's always that NFC team, it was the Giants for a while, then it was the Seahawks for a while, but there's always that team that kind of continues to be a thorn in the Packers' side and thwart their chances. And I love the poetry of the fact that the Giants could come along and actually do something. It might mean we end up having to face them in the championship game down the road, but I love that they might be able to kind of knock Detroit down a peg and open up the division.
Yeah, that would be certainly wonderful. And what else is certainly wonderful is our guest tonight, and I think it might be that time.
Cheesehead Radio special guest.
Well, we're welcoming right here to Cheesehead Radio back in a very full booth, but that's okay. I think we can slide over and make a little room. Rob Reischel is joining us tonight here on Cheesehead Radio. Rob, how are you doing today?
I am great. I like that intro, guys. I got to get my wife to play that when I walk in the house. That's pretty awesome.
I'll send it to you.
Make it your ringtone on your phone.
Yeah, there we go. Right.
All yours. All right. Rob, I'll start us off here. What we'll do is we'll just toss you questions until you get sick of us. But I'm going to just start off with the I guess the big one here. Aaron Rodgers is just getting his groove on. I'm impressed by it. The accuracy has been such a big thing. It seems to affect the whole team, but his hamstring is threatening to crash the entire party here, and his calf and ankle. We saw Brett Hundley coming at the end of the game, a little nondescript. Give us your assessment at this point of what you kind of think we're seeing out of Rodgers health-wise. Do you think he's gonna make it? And if he does struggle, do you think Hundley's in any way, shape, or form ready to be a crutch for this team until Rodgers were to come back, a la Matt Flynn?
Yeah, I'll answer your second question first, and I think that while the verdict is probably still out there, there hasn't been as much positive seen in year 2 from Hundley as I think a lot of people would have liked. He left a really good taste in everyone's mouth in year 1, certainly in the summer of year 1 when his quarterback rating was off the charts and as good as pretty much as anybody who played in the preseason. And then he really did flash at times last year. But, he's got his few chances, guys, this year. It hasn't been very impressive. And on top of that, he missed most summer, with injury. So, I think if they've got to go to Hundley at any point in time, guys, it probably spells some trouble. Now, having said that, I guess I'd be really surprised if any of these injuries right now stops Rodgers from going full bore over these last 3 games. Obviously, his mobility is going to be limited, but guys, I compare it real close to 14. And you remember how he was dinged and slowed at the end of that season, and even in the game for the divisional championship at home, they get up on the Lions 14-0 in that Week 17 game. He leaves for probably 5 minutes of game time, maybe 15 minutes of real life time, and he comes back and it's tied at 14. Stafford and the Lions heated up there real quick in that stretch, and then he turns it on down the stretch. If memory serves, I think they won that like 30-20, and then he was really good in the Dallas game in the divisional round. And there's a lot of people, guys, that'll still make the case if he was as mobile as he normally would have been in that Seattle game, in the NFC title game, they'd probably win that game. I don't know if I'd go that far, but guys, at this time of the year, everybody's dealing with something. Everybody's fighting through something. I mean, TJ Lane's playing with a broken foot, for God's sake. You tip your hat to guys like that. So, I think you'll see Rodgers 60 minutes all of these next 3 games, unless something dramatically different happens in these games, and the injuries get aggravated or worse. But I think the condition he's in now, they'll just be smart with him through the course of the week. Give him the Wednesday and Thursday off for the most part, and just try to get him to Sunday. And guys, I think he will be fine.
All right. That's good to hear. Michelle?
All right. Hi, Rob. How are you?
I am great. Nice talking to you, Michelle.
Yeah, you too. So one of the things we want to talk to you a little bit about tonight is your new book with Wayne Larrabee, which I had the pleasure of working with you on at Triumph Books. It's called If These Walls Could Talk, Green Bay Packers, Story from the Green Bay Packers Sideline, Locker Room, and Press Box. And that's available wherever books are sold. It's having some great sales leading into the holidays, which is very exciting. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is when we were working on this book with Wayne, I know that one of the things that you had both expressed was kind of your concern that the Packers' window was beginning to close. And as we've seen, they've won 3 in a row. They're kind of getting on a little bit of a hot streak. But still, I don't think anyone would have expected before the season that they would be in danger of missing the playoffs for the first time since 2008. So what do you think is this team's biggest impediment to winning another championship?
Boy, it's a great question, Michelle. I mean, I think they've got a few of them. And you're right. I don't think anybody saw this, this team being 7-6 at this point in time. If you guys remember right, back to late August, early September, Vegas puts lines on every game, when the season starts, and they made Green Bay a favorite in every single game after the Teddy Bridgewater injury at Minnesota. I mean, so nobody saw this coming. I mean, if you listen to Vegas, they were going to go 16-0. But, Michelle, the running game clearly isn't, while it's a little bit better, and while I think they've seen some things from Ty Montgomery and maybe Christian Michael, James Starks has gone backwards, and he looks like he's about at the end. So they're certainly not running the ball as well as they have. I think they've got to be concerned when they see a top flight quarterback, and I know they saw Wilson last week and had their way with him, but I'm still, Michelle, not 100% sold on this secondary that Randall and Rollins and Gunter can hold up against elite level quarterbacking play and wide receiver play. Now, the good thing, Michelle, obviously for Green Bay, is there aren't a lot of teams that have that in the National Football League right now.
Right.
Their depth at outside linebacker, I think, is certainly going to be a concern if these guys don't come back and get back as quickly as they would hope. Fackrell and Perry, and obviously Matthews is extremely limited now, playing with just one arm. That's not the Clay Matthews that everyone has grown used to seeing. So, I mean, they've got a few, but, I mean, Michelle and guys, if you look across the league, the good news for Green Bay is there is not even close to anything in the league today that you'd consider a dominant football team. New England is arguably the best team in football, and that's not the New England we saw win a Super Bowl 2 years ago. Seattle is obviously still one of the elite teams, but this is nothing like the Seattle team that won the Super Bowl 3 years ago. Denver's not the same team that won the Super Bowl last year. I mean, I can't remember a year, guys, when we'll go into the postseason and it's really this wide open. I'd have a hard time right now, guys, labeling anybody as a Super Bowl favorite. So when you look at Green Bay, there are some parallels, some real striking parallels to 2010 when you've got the red-hot quarterback, a team that's getting hot at the right time, and they certainly seem like a team that's on the rise and has figured some things out here in the last month during this 3-game winning streak. That, I mean, I would argue Green Bay, if they can get in, they're certainly as dangerous as anybody out there, and it wouldn't shock me, guys, if you saw a run like 2010.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling those parallels right now.
Yeah, and Michelle, I think they're really justified. The way Rodgers has played, I mean, honestly, I scratch my head and I say to myself, we saw Rodgers play at a Hall of Fame level for 5.5 years between, 2009 and then midway through the 15 season, and then he kind of goes in the opposite direction and plays very mediocre football for 16, 18 games in a row, and now he's back to that off-the-charts level. I think the real question with Rodgers is what happened in that 16 or 18 game window there from, after week 6 of 2015 when they were 6-0 to midway through this season, and how does a guy like that struggle to that level? Because now you're seeing Aaron Rodgers again that you saw in 2011, that you saw in 2014. Just a guy who's lighting up the league, and you guys have seen enough football. You know that when you have a red-hot quarterback like that, it's anything is possible, and there aren't many right now you take in the league over Rodgers.
For sure. All right, thank you.
Hey, Rob, this is Al here.
Hey, Al.
First of all, thank you for coming on with us again. You're a real regular with us, and we appreciate your time and talking to you. It's always interesting and fun. And I want to just piggyback on what you just started to talk about with Aaron Rodgers there. I remember an interview you did when you were doing some promotion for the book. I think it was after the Dallas game on WTMJ, and one of the topics was, what's wrong with Aaron Rodgers at that time, and the consensus was, well, gee, nobody knows, or they would have fixed it by now, right? So now, seemingly out of the blue, he and the offense have found a rhythm again. Do you have any better idea now of what might have been wrong?
Al, it's mystifying. I mean, I know they're getting some pieces back in place. Maybe some things figured out with the wideouts. The emergence of Adams, Jordy Nelson, maybe coming into more of a groove. He's had a little bit more of Jared Cook to work with than he did early in the season. But and I'm sure the Packers would love to know, what happened over the last 12 games last year when he didn't have a passer rating over 100. Then he's got, I think, the first 2 games this year, Jacksonville and Minnesota, where his rating was under 100. I think he eclipsed it in the Detroit game, Al, and then he went 2 or 3 more in a row again where it was under 100. Yeah. I mean, it was mystifying to see a guy whose career passer rating was the best in the history of football have that kind of stretch where his rating was under 100. And now he's back to the Aaron Rodgers that I think everybody knew and was so accustomed and used to seeing. He's got the 4 straight games again where it's over 100. He had 150 plus rating against the Seahawks, which is obviously off the charts. When you guys know the highest he can get is 158.3. Al, he's had as good offensive line play this year as he's ever had, and that's remarkable considering they lost Josh Sitton. But the tackles have played as well as any pair of tackles in football. It doesn't matter who's playing center. Both of those guys are top 10, top 12 centers in the National Football League. And then when TJ Lang's on the field, he's as good as probably all but 2 or 3 guards in the National Football League. And then Lane Taylor has held his own. So, it may have taken him, Al, a little bit longer than usual to trust that line entirely. He bailed on a lot of plays early in the year and fled the pocket and didn't give things the amount of time necessary, I think, to develop and really play itself out downfield. I think he's trusting that stuff a lot better now, guys. But, in terms of what happened in that 16-18 game window, whatever you want to point to, I have no idea, and I'm not sure the Packers themselves know.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Okay. CD?
Sure. Hey, you wrote this summer, back in July, you wrote a nice article about my favorite player, Clinton Dix. And you wrote that you thought he had the look for the part of a top player in the National Football League. Continuing your assessment now, actually, in the season, how are you grading out Do you think he's actually a top player in the league?
Well, he's not a top player in the league. He's not even the best safety on the team. And that's not a slam at Clinton Dix. That honestly, that's more than anything. That's a tip of the hat to Morgan Burnett, who's having a career year and playing as well over the last 6 or 8 weeks as any safety in football. The biggest thing, guys, that I'm surprised is we haven't seen as many big plays and splash plays from Clinton Dix as I kind of thought we would. I think he's got the 3 interceptions and he's forced a fumble, so he is part of 4 turnover plays. But I expected even more. And you know, it is interesting, guys. I traced the history of that. I remember when I did the story, and when guys like Leroy Butler and then it was Darren Sharper and also Nick Collins. All of those guys really busted out in year 4. Now, this is year 3 for Clinton Dix. So I guess we'll see how next year goes for him. You know, he is only 23, guys. You know, there's been probably a lot more on his plate because of some of the injury stuff back there. They probably can't do as much with him as they would have liked had they had a healthy Sam Shields and a healthy Quentin Rollins and Demarius Randall through the course of the season. The great thing, guys, about Clinton Dix is he never comes off the field. You know, he is extremely reliable. But in terms of the big plays, which I thought, guys, they'd get more from him through the course of this season, they haven't got those. But to give him a grade, I mean, he's definitely at least a B player right now, guys. He hasn't reached that level of being an A, but he's extremely reliable. He's not afraid to tackle. He's sure back there in terms of what he's doing in coverage and responsibility. There's really nothing you can point to where you say he's a liability. He just hasn't jumped off the page and been that splash player in some areas that maybe I think the Packers themselves thought they'd get some of those plays out of him this year.
All right, Rob, during the game against the Seahawks, you tweeted that the Packers have a hot back in Ty Montgomery, so why keep going to Starks? And even this week when McCarthy made the kind of officially unofficial announcement, we've all known it for weeks, that Ty Montgomery is a true running back now, he also said that he won't name any player the starter at that position. Why do you think he's so insistent on using a running back by committee system?
You know, Michelle, for years I have asked myself and others the question, you know, what is the Green Bay Packers' love affair with Jayme Starks? And I don't have a good answer and have never really gotten one. I think all of Packer Nation appreciates what Jayme Starks did in 2010 in terms of giving them a running game for the postseason and helping them bring home another Lombardi trophy. But you know, they gave him a chance to be the full-time back in 2011, and he flopped, and that was a mess with Alex Green and some others that particular year, or maybe it was the next year, I guess, in 12. But every time Jayme Starks has been given a chance to run with that job, it's kind of blown up and failed. You know, this is what, year 7 for Jayme Starks? I mean, guys, there aren't many people in the league, any backs that fight the football and the passing game the way Jayme Starks does. I mean, it's like watching, you know, 9-year-olds try to catch the ball at a peewee game sometimes. You know, there's some positives to how he's run the ball through the course of the years, guys. But the last month or so, he looks done. And, you know, I think Montgomery is the obvious answer there moving forward. Guys, I've really been impressed that, you know, you give Montgomery a crease, and he's really learned to run like a back. For a guy who's just made that transition and switched to that position, you don't need to give him a lot of room. He's a pretty powerful guy. I mean, he's built just like James Jones was, and Sterling Sharp for all those years. He is a powerful guy, and you know, if they're serious about making him a running back moving forward, he puts 10 or 15 pounds of muscle on in his leg over the course of the off season. He'd have a chance, guys, to come back. You know, Michelle, in terms of why it's a committee, you know, I just right now I don't think Montgomery can handle maybe more than 10, 12, 14, you know, carries a game. Michael's going to have to come and get 6 or 8 of those. I don't know anymore where Starks fares. You know, we saw in that Seattle game, he starts the game and then he starts the third quarter. You know, but other than that, he gets a handful of snaps and then he's gone. I wonder if the patience there has just kind of run out, and now maybe it's going to be Montgomery and Michael and a little bit of Ripkowski maybe on the goal line. I don't know specifically, Michelle, you know, why McCarthy won't say who's the starter, but I mean that's all kind of window dressing anyways. I mean if you watch snaps, you're going to figure it out pretty quickly who they trust, who they like, who they're going to move forward with. And you don't really need a depth chart necessarily to do that. But, I mean, I would say, guys, if they're going to make a run into the playoffs, Ty Montgomery's going to be pretty critical in trying to do that.
Right, and you almost wonder if McCarthy sort of has this deeply held belief that kind of keeping it a little bit quiet about who he's going to be starting on the field in the base offense or in the base defense, even just gives him some sort of advantage in terms of his opponents. just because he never loves to give those details really about any position.
No, he doesn't, and I guess that's just the Bill Belichick way of doing business in the league these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
To let people know as little as possible, but these are smart guys that work 100 hours a week for a reason, and when they watch enough tape and enough film, it's not going to take them. It's not going to take them real long to realize, hey, Morgan Burnett's an inside linebacker now, right? And Micah Hyde is the safety and the dime, and this and that and the other thing. So, Mike can try to give out as little information as possible, but I can guarantee you John Fox knows what's going on.
Right, exactly. All right, thank you.
Rob, I love your line about James Starks fighting the ball.
It's not pretty, is it?
I absolutely, and I see it all the time, and I think it all the time, but I never quite put those words together. I love that description, so I'm going to steal that at some point. But I'll give you credit.
Hey, I think everything that's any good in life has been stolen at some point anyways, right? So,
there you go. Look at it that way. Hey, a couple of weeks ago we had Wayne on, and I asked him about the chapter in the book dealing with the whole summer of Favre escapades. He commented, expressed how difficult it was for him to write about those events that transpired that summer. I'm curious if you had the same feelings about it when you guys were writing the book, and also at the time that it actually was all going down. What were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was like living reality TV, or being thrust into an episode of Days of Our Lives or something like that. It was just a really strange time, and you had no idea day to day, what twists and subplots were gonna play out, and where any of this was going. I don't think anybody at the end of the day was all that surprised or shocked, in late June when Brett said he wanted back in, and it really kind of started this whole thing, heading in a pretty negative direction for a lot of people. If you knew Favre's history, and everybody obviously around here does, I don't think any of that was any great surprise. It just, I don't know, guys. Even that was 8+ years ago now. Even now, I'm, a little torn on where to place blame and all. I mean, I guess it's a pretty even split and stuff like that. But there's no doubt Favre put the Packers in an incredibly difficult position. They were ready to move on, and obviously at that point in time, had they gone back to Brett, they would have never had all these years with Aaron Rodgers. And Ted made the right decision. But at the same point in time, you're talking about sending Elvis out of town. That's Babe Ruth there. That you're telling to go to another team in another city and get out of our conference and get out of our division and get out of our building. And a case can certainly be made, and Michelle knows this. I've done this in some books that we've done together at Triumph. Brett Favre is the most important person that's ever come through that franchise and that organization. So it was just a really strange time, guys, in terms of trying to separate from the past and move on to the future. And it's going to be really interesting, guys, in the next 3, 4, 5 years if something like that has the potential to happen again, because we've seen it with Peyton Manning. We've seen it with other great legendary quarterbacks, the Joe Montanas of the world, through time. And there aren't many that just stay in a place for 20 years. And this is year 12 for Aaron. I would think in the next 4, 5, 6 years they're going to have a situation like this potentially pop up with him as he hits his late 30s. He just turned 33 a week ago. So, I mean, he's creeping into that territory himself. I wouldn't say it was difficult to write about, guys, but it was a really weird time in that summer of 2008, being in Green Bay all the time, just really not knowing what was going to happen next. And guys, I mean, it's probably the most passionate fan base in the world, and then to see the fans really that torn and that divided. I didn't think anything could separate and tear the fan base apart quite like what we saw in that summer, where there were people that immediately became Jets fans and anti-Packer people because they made the choice of going to Rodgers.
Yeah, soap opera is a good description for everything that happened that year.
Hey, it's interesting to hear you talk about this possibly happening to Aaron Rodgers someday. I brought that up before, and I usually get booed off the stage. I don't think Packer fans are ready to quite hear that yet either.
No, but, it's interesting though. I had a talk with Aaron about that about a year ago, and he kind of, I mean, you guys know how smart he is. I mean, he kind of already understands and realizes that could easily happen to him. We talked at length one day about that, and he said, I could easily see that happening to me in 2020, 2022, at whatever point in time, if his skills start to decline a little bit and the Packers have another quarterback that they're high on that somehow fall into their lap. It happens everywhere. I mean, nobody has defeated Father Time yet, right? And Aaron knows that, and I understand it's not something anybody ever wants to hear, but I would, my best guess, guys, is Rodgers would handle it better and differently than Favre did.
You certainly would hope so.
All right. Well, you have been listening to Rob Reischel of Packers Plus and co-author with Wayne Larrivee of the new book, If These Walls Could Talk, Green Bay Packers, Stories from the Green Bay Packers Sideline, Locker Room, and Press Box. That book is on sale now, anywhere books are sold. It would make a great Christmas gift for all the or Hanukkah holiday gift for all the Packers fans in your life. Rob, thank you so much for coming on with us. It's a pleasure to have you, as always. And we wish you luck covering these sure-to-be crazy last few weeks of the season.
It should be a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's always a lot of fun talking to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Night, guys.
Thanks, Rob. Good night.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight on Cheesehead Radio, and a special thanks to Rob Reischel for also joining us. Make sure to head on over to PackersTalk.com, where you can explore several unique Packers podcasts. Please follow at PackersTalkNet on Twitter, page on Facebook. Cheesehead Radio and all the Packers Talk podcasts are available on iTunes. Just Google Packers Talk iTunes, and you'll find them. Be sure to subscribe, and please leave us a review if you can. You can also listen in by using Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, or your favorite podcasting app and search for Packers Talk. Finally, please be sure to support our sponsor, Ticket King. You can find them online at theticketking.com. That's theticketking.com. That's a wrap. Go Pack Go.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.
Night. Go Pack.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can seem intense. Like breakup R&B intense.
I thought you said you loved the sweater that I got you. If you didn't, you could have told me.
Geico makes it easy. Just go to Geico.com anytime to update or check your policy without all the extra drama.
I even had a gift receipt.
Holiday Happy Helpline.
Help! My stockings are hung by the chimney with care, but I need some stellar gifts to fill them with.
Why get hung up? Just go to Old Navy.
Old Navy?
Yep, Old Navy's got great gifts for everyone on your list, and the entire store is up to 60% off.
60% off?
That's right. Old Navy's got gifts for just $2, $4, $6, and $8 for a Merry Christmas to all.
And to all a great price. Thanks.
Don't thank me. Thank Old Navy. Offers valid 12/12 through 12/18. Exclusive.